Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. What I'm going to be sharing with you today is what I call the real estate license loophole. This is a webinar that I do for realtors on a weekly basis. And I'm going to be sharing with you some things that might surprise you just a little bit about the power that you have just because you hold a real estate license. And frankly, it's the power to create multiple streams of passive income, not just one or two or three, but just by having your real estate license. We're all familiar with commissions and that ebb and flow in commissions. But what if you had three or more passive income sources that also fed you when you had a slow month? What would that look like? And also, because you hold a real estate license, you have a really distinct advantage over those that don't have one to significantly reduce your taxes. So that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. Now, why is this important? Well, most realtors, we work on referrals or sphere. And right now, for most realtors that I talk to, that frankly just isn't paying the bills. They need leads. Now, those folks that are successful in real estate, most of the realtors that I talk to, it's kind of interesting, but they're keeping way too much money in the bank that's just earning nothing for them.
Girl,
And when you look
totally different.
back at everything that we've learned about investing, me too, most of that was not the right advice for our future. And again, if you're doing really good in this business, then the IRS is probably taking way too much of your commission check. And then we all think Social Security is hanging out there, and it is, it's hanging out there, but it's not quite as secure as we think. Now, drop it in the chat if you can. Back in the day when Social Security was created, that was 1933, we had about 160 workers paying for every one retiree. Today, with the baby boomers coming into retirement age, we have the largest population of retirees that we've ever had in the Social Security system. And there was a trust fund that was put together back in 1933. And that trust fund is depleted by about 2031. So it's not as secure as we think. And instead of having 160 workers paying for every one retiree, today, how many workers do you think are paying for every retiree? Just drop it down in the chat if you've got an idea. No ideas, huh? Oh, 15. Thank you, Kathy. No, it's not even that many. It's three. Three workers pay for every retiree today, with the biggest glut of retirees than we've ever had. Now, I'm going to share with you a little bit about my journey. And my journey in the financial sector, frankly, didn't all start out like a bed of roses. And not all my real estate investments were raving successes. And it gave me an opportunity, though, to grow and to expand. So I was told, Kelly, go to school, get a good job, life's going to be fine. How many of you heard that same message? Yeah, that's what I heard. So I did. I went to school, I got a good job. I was in software development for about 25 years. I had a 401k, I had 6 funds. I dropped all my money into those funds. Then, I was married. So I was in that software development space for 25 years, married for 21 years. And then within 1 month, all of that changed. I lost that job, that 6-figure job. My husband left very unexpectedly, left me with an 11, 13, and 15-year-old sons, and I was 100% solely financially responsible for him. I got to shift. I got to figure out what might be next. At the same time, my 401k turned into a 201k, not once, but twice in that decade. And then I got diagnosed with a melanoma. So it put me in a spot that I really got to create what was next for me. And probably like a lot of you, I decided I didn't want to go back into corporate America. And so I started looking out at other opportunities and other things that I could invest in, frankly. And I started with this book, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Have any of you had an opportunity to listen to this? Yeah. That was, frankly, my start in the investing world. Not only did I read his book, I went to his weekend workshop and I did his entire mentoring program and started buying houses. And then I learned after 2 months to find a house, 2 months to rehab a house, a month to put a renter in, And then fast forward a year, 3 months to get that renter out, I realized that I wasn't the best property manager. I didn't particularly like taking the phone calls at night. And I wound up partnering with a group that did it all for me. So I could buy as many houses as I wanted to and grow my portfolio without me having to do the work. Then I learned how to manage that money I was saving to invest in real estate. That was a second game changer for me. And then just last year, I actually learned how to reduce my taxes just by virtue of the fact that I held a real estate license. So with those three major changes, it really put me into a world where I started to finally create some success. I got my real estate life and securities licenses, and I was able to acquire about 90 rental properties within a 5-year period. That for me was a game changer to really start down that path of resetting what that 401k had kind of taken. And at the same time, when we look at the value and the opportunity that we have here at EXP, I've got a modern team of 150 agents, leader of our Freedom Team. I'm not sure if you guys have seen our stats, but they're really quite amazing. When you look at 2025, we as a team closed over 12,000 transactions, 4.7 billion in volume. And the stat I love the best about this team is that 6.52 average transactions per agent. You go back and you look at the NAR stats. We have 70% of our realtors that didn't close a single transaction last year and 70% in 2024. And we have 30% that have left the business, and the average agent is closing about 2.7 transactions, according to NAR. And so our agents are closing about 6.52. That is a great testimony to us. So that ability that we have to be around some of the best leaders in the industry, as well as be able to create some financial freedom because of the tools we have, is just incredible. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today is how you can craft your own wealth mastery blueprint based on 3 pillars. And so the base of that is really your business. It's what you're doing in real estate. It's plugging into the Freedom Team. It's leaning into all the various ways that you can create transactions and leads and grow and staying connected. Once your business is solid, then you're in a position where you can start to create your wealth mastery blueprint. And I see 3 pillars in this creation. The first is the money multiplier machine. It is that ability to take that cash that, every time you have a closing and you're setting it aside for a slow month, or you're setting it aside because you're investing, to put that in a place that it actually works for you, and not only works once for you, but works twice for you. That middle pillar is minimizing your taxes. If you're doing very good in this business, you're paying way too much in taxes. And so how do you really cut back on the taxes? We're going to spend a little time on that. And then the third pillar is what I call the ultimate property purchase process. Now, I went down that Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad path, and I started $26,000 of education, and I started buying my own houses. And when I learned how to do it faster and not do it in my backyard, that really set me free to be able to grow my portfolio and grow it at the pace that I wanted. Now, for those of you that are on here, if you would like this free book, drop it in the chat and I'd be happy to send it to you. It's called Micro Wins to Millions. It was written by my 2 mentors in the real estate investing space. And so I'm happy to share it with you. We'll get down your names and send it to you. So in back to 2025 and 2024, that 70% of our realtors did not close a single transaction. That difference between the top producers and everyone else, it's frankly, it's not talent. It's a predictable lead flow. And so the foundation of your wealth mastery blueprint, it's your business. Now, most agents rely on Sphere or referrals, and that isn't working in this market. So we need a way to effectively connect with cold market. Get leads, nurture leads, turn them into business, and become that agent in your market. And so once your active income is solid, then you can start focus on the creation of wealth. And that creation of wealth then is each one of these pillars. And Kathy, if you don't mind, could you just write down all those names or snag them so that I can get that off to them?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. So let's start with that first pillar, your money management machine. So this pillar is based on a foundation of solid financial principles. Well, what are those principles? Number one, if you go back and look at my 2001 and 2008 experience, some of you may have shared that journey with me, or you've had it more recently in 2020 or 2022. But safety from market risk is key. Whenever you take a dip, if I started at 100,000 when I took that first dip and dropped to 50, I now have to get 100% to get it back. I only lost 50%, but I've got to earn 100% to get it all back. So that ability to recover from market dips is something we want to avoid. We don't want to have to play that game. Tax-free growth is truly that second pillar of solid financial principles. With tax-free growth, you can put your money in a place that as it continues to grow, you're in a position where you don't have to pay taxes on it. And then the third one is liquidity of funds. Most of us don't really think of this. When we go to our tax accountant says, Kelly, put your money in a traditional IRA. You can avoid taxes later today. Well, that's a tax issue, but on the liquidity side, when I put it in that traditional IRA, I don't have access to it until I'm 59 and a half. Well, that's not a great necessarily investment strategy. Our investments should be liquid so that when we have a slow month, we have access to them. And when we have a great opportunity, we also have access to them. Now, most people, when they think of investing, they think of either or. The market has been going up. Or should I do a CD because I see that interest rates are higher and I would like a little more safety? Or maybe I do real estate and I like real estate, but then there's this cryptocurrency thing. What should I be investing in? Well, I would empower you really to think of what I call the power of and. What do I mean here? Let me show you an example. That blue line at the bottom, that's the S&P. That's the S&P coming through 2001, 2008 and taking off again. Okay, if you started with 100,000 over a set of years, you'd end up with 500,000. It was a decent investment. That red line, that's this foundational asset that I'm talking about. Now it's got a name. It's called Indexed Universal Life. And most people think of life insurance as a risk mitigation strategy. And it does that, and it does it well. We think of it as an investing strategy. So that red line is if you took that same 100,000 and you had invested it in Indexed Universal Life, you would have wound up with 800,000 instead. If you were in either or mindset, you might take one or the other. Now that green line, that's a mythical 12% return line. Maybe you're an investor in real estate, as I am, and you think you can do better than the market. And if you were choosing either or, you would take that green line. That purple line, that's the combination. That's the power of and that I'm talking about. And this is what I do and what I've been doing for 10 years. I invest my money in that foundational asset, Indexed Universal Life. And when I get enough to go buy my next house, then I'll loan it to myself and go buy a house. So it's sitting in here earning, let's call it 10%. I have to pay on the loan 5%. So I've got a positive arbitrage of 5%. And yet my money isn't even in the policy anymore. It's over here in my real estate investments. That's how you can earn twice. And that's how you can create some leverage. And that's that purple line. So that same 100,000 in 4 different scenarios can create a significant difference for you. Now, why would you even consider this foundation? Well, this is truly the foundation of what the wealthy do. Why? Because it's 100% safe from market risk. If the market goes down, you just get zero. If the market goes up, you get a multiplier of what the market does. It's tax efficient like a Roth. If you're doing well in real estate, you make too much money to invest in a Roth IRA. So you need a place to put your money has a tax efficient growth strategy. It's liquid and available before you're 59 and a half. That to me is what the biggest key, because I might need my money in a bad month and I might find a good deal that I want to go after. So it combines those great returns with the power of and the ability to create leverage. Now, Dr. Dottie, he is one of our clients and that learned about Index Universal Life way back in the early 2000s. And so I would like to share his story using that money multiplier machine.
Well, I've been a physician for quite some time and just recently retired last year. On the personal side, some of my investments were underperforming. Had I been in the mutual funds that I had previously been in, I would have had about a 60% loss. It was around that time that I began to become familiar with some of the life insurance products that I have relied heavily on since that time. One of the life insurance products that I became very familiar with was Index Universal Life. And it ticked a lot of the boxes that some of my previous investments did not include. One of the things I like about Index Universal Life is when I went to make contributions to IRAs, my income limited me as to what my options were. I couldn't do a Roth because I earned too much money. And the rules limited how much I could actually put into an IRA at the time. I also realized that the IRA is only tax deferred, it's not tax free. So the growth inside that IRA, eventually I was going to have to pay taxes on that. And my general feeling was taxes were going to be higher in the future than they are now. Every business has some type of a cash float. You need to keep some cash liquid in order to pay the bills. Where do you keep that cash? You keep that cash someplace where it's very, very safe, the bank. You keep that cash where it's someplace where it's very, very liquid, the bank. But the problem with the bank is there's no return. You can utilize strategies with Index Universal Life that is equally liquid, equally safe, but gives you a good rate of return tax-free on that same money using IUL as a strategy. One of the things I hear a lot of times when I'm talking to different people about IUL, it's, well, I want to do this other investment. And should I do this other investment or IUL? And my answer to them is always, well, why or? Why not and? Why not do the other investment and IUL? So what I've done over the years is employed what we call the power of and, where I take a premium and I pay the premium dollars into the IUL, and then I take a policy loan out, and I'm making an arbitrage there. I'm making money on the money that I'm borrowing, not borrowing it out, I'm borrowing against the policy. But the money is still in the policy and it's still growing at a rate greater than the interest rate that I'm paying. Then I'll take that money and I'll invest it in whatever that might be, in a multifamily housing development, in a senior living center, in oil wells, in a new startup medical tech company. But I'm making more money on my investment than anyone else with the same investment, because I'm making money in that investment, but I'm also making money over here inside the IUL on the same dollar that I'm making money from on this side.
Yeah, it's a powerful asset and a powerful story, and I've been able to really use it to help me finance that growth in my portfolio. So that's the money multiplier machine. Let's take a look at taxes and minimizing your taxes. So let me know, do you expect that you're going to see in the next 10, 20, 30 years that taxes are going to go up, go down, or just stay flat? Chuck, I'm seeing an up. Yeah, Zach, an up. Okay, so agreed. We're trillions in debt. COVID spend to recover from. Our entitlements, which are Social Security and Medicare, are 2/3 of our federal spend. And I talked to you early on about what's going on with Social Security. I do believe they'll fix it. You know, people ask me, is it going to go away? And I don't think so. They're going to fix it. But it's 2/3 of our federal spend, and our servicing of our debt just came up into the middle between Social Security and Medicare. It used to be those two were at the top, but now our servicing of debt just popped into that mix. So with our baby boomers retiring, that trust fund being depleted, our tax brackets, it doesn't feel like it, but they're at an all-time low historically. If you really go back and look, they're at a low. So we can probably expect some changes. Now, when you go to your tax accountant and you sit down and say, you know, I'd really like to lower my taxes, they usually give me a couple choices. I can spend more money, give away more money to charity, have more expenses, or I can invest in an IRA. And, we talked about why that's not great investment advice. Number one, it's a spending strategy instead of an investing strategy. Number two, it's not liquid until you're 59 and a half. And number three, you're paying on the seed instead of the harvest. Well, what do I really mean by the seed instead of the harvest? Let's just look at an example. Let's say that you're putting away 10,000 a year into something that's earning an average 7%. Now, according to the rule of 72, that means you're going to double your money about every 10 years. So 10,000 today in 10 years will equal 20,000. In 20 years, it'll equal 40,000. And in 30 years, it's going to equal 80,000. And most of you said you're expecting that taxes are going to go up. Would you rather pay taxes on 10,000 today or 80,000 in 30 years when you're pulling that money out? That's the seed versus the harvest. That's why Roths are so popular. But if you make a lot of money, you can't do a Roth, which is where IUL comes in. So seed versus the harvest. So you really need a game plan, a strategy to keep more of the money that you make. And if you could get a big tax deduction, drop from the 32% bracket to 24, or maybe the 22% to the 12, how much more could you invest? Now, I've been multiple six-figure income for years and kept my tax bracket at the 12% rate. And that's because of having a game plan and having strategies. So it's shifting from tax reaction to tax planning. It's really getting a guide, somebody that's going to help you create and execute that tax strategy. It's creating the right vehicles, the right investment vehicles, the right wealth accumulation vehicles, and deploying those techniques and those advantages that you get to really cut back on your taxes. Now, Steve Earle, he's another one of my mentors. He's closed over 5,000 properties. He actually is an EXP realtor in EXP. When he came in and joined me, he was closing about 50 transactions a month. He's the founder and owner of Done For You Real Estate and the author of Micro Wins to Millions. I'm going to have him share with you his tax journey.
Learning about cost segregation and bonus depreciation is powerful. My name is Steve Earle. I am the CEO of Done For You Real Estate USA, and I am also a real estate investor and have been for the last 20 plus years. One of the things that I've discovered recently is something called accelerated or bonus depreciation, which can be accomplished through doing a cost segregation study. I just wanted to share real quickly an experience that I had in 2022. So in 2022, I purchased 4 single-family residences. And throughout the year, I discovered this idea of bonus depreciation that as a real estate professional, I could take advantage of. I did a cost segregation study on each one of them. It cost me just under $3,000 per study. But what that did for me is it literally allowed me to reduce my income by $80,000 per property. Talk about powerful. That's $320,000 that I was able to reduce from my income in 2022. If you are a real estate professional, you need to be buying at least 1 property per year in order to reduce your tax burden, your tax obligation. If you are a real estate professional, you've got to take advantage of bonus depreciation while it lasts.
Well, and it did just get extended. So bonus depreciation is back up to 100%. So that's the good news. And this is all about being in the right circles. You guys are in the right circles here at EXP. Steve is an EXP realtor. He's the one that introduced me to bonus depreciation. I didn't save $320,000. I only saved $80,000 off my taxes, but that was a game changer. That's another house I can go buy. So let's look at the last piece, the ultimate property purchase process. Now, we're all in real estate. We all understand the game, but look at the game over the long haul. Single-family home prices between 1970 and 2022 have steadily increased. We did have that dip in 2008. We all probably felt that. If any of you were investors at the time, if you could weather the storm because your rental rates continued to grow up, you see that in the bottom line there. you were able to hold on to the houses. You were in a 30-year fixed mortgage and you were able to get through it. Um, it was anyone that was in a variable loan had a little more challenge, but you can see that home prices continued to go up. We're seeing a little bit of softening right now, but even with that softening, we can expect them to turn around again. But the rental rates are really part of the really positive part. These are three of the houses that I bought in that period of time. And look at the growth in the rental rates. When I bought them, they were cash flowing. They were good, solid properties. Now you fast forward a few years, and those rental rates have gone up significantly on those houses. So it's you have to ask. A lot of you are probably wondering, is now a good time to buy rental real estate? We've had sky high housing prices. Interest rates, we know that they've kind of gone through the roof compared to what we were seeing with our 2.5% to 3% interest. Our economy feels a bit shaky. Inflation seems like it's at an all-time high. These were the Time magazine headlines from the 1970s. Housing costs, interest rates, it all sounds familiar. Now, these are the headlines when you could purchase a house for $50,000 that today is worth over $1.4 million. So when is, the Chinese proverb, when is the best time to plant a tree? Well, it was 20 years ago. When's the second best time? It's today. The same with real estate. Now, the interest rates, we're familiar with the graph. We lived it. If I was buying my first home, my first car back in the 1980s, when my sister got her first home at 12% interest rate. Some people were sitting at 18%. It was ugly. We've been spoiled for the last number of years. And, we know and we educate our buyers that the interest rates today are far more normal than they've been. And there are multiple ways to do real estate. This is where I started. I did the rich dad, poor dad, do-it-yourself method. Found it, bought it, fixed it up, managed the contractors, 5 months to get it on the market. I was really quite grateful to find another way to do it and to leverage a team where I could get out of my backyard. I'm in Colorado Springs. Our prices are fairly high for the rent ratio that you can get. And so when I was able to get out of my backyard and get into some other markets by having somebody do it for me, that was a game changer. I was able to grow far more quickly and get my time back. Now, Andrea Barnes, she had the same experience. She had been a real estate investor for 8 years, and she took this original 6 homes she bought that grew into 18 homes without adding more money to it. So
I have always been interested in real estate. It's been something that I've tracked and been curious about, but I didn't really know anything about how to get into it. We went in hook, line, and sinker. We were able to buy 6 houses. But sure enough, within 3 years, our houses started to multiply. So we sold one house, refinanced another house, bought 2 houses in Florida. And then over that 10-year period of time, maybe 11, we got up to a total of 18 houses. And it was all from the houses buying other houses. Even in this different market that we're in, we still bought 6 houses, all in 22. You have to look at all the ways that real estate benefits you financially. And so, certainly there's cash flow from the rents. There's mortgage pay down because the tenant is paying for your mortgage. There are tax advantages. Equity grows. And then finally, it's an inflation hedge. I mean, there's 5 ways that real estate is really protecting you in your financial future.
Yeah, and my story is similar to hers. As we wrap up here, I started with the house that I lived in, and then when Brian and I got married, we moved, and I was able to rent my house. And then I started with that very first rich dad, poor dad house, and then my dad passed away, and I inherited a third of his house. So with that was kind of my start, and then I was a little bit stuck. I had that 401k that had halved a couple times. And from that, I was able to actually do some IRA loans on it and get a couple houses down in the Phoenix area. And then I was kind of at a stuck position. I had leveraged everything I had. But by the time I started to invest in some other tools, some other systems, create some leverage and Multiplier, I was able to really start to grow the portfolio. And, the landscape has changed. a little bit with the interest rates. So I'm doing more midterm rentals today than I was in the past. I was doing all long-term rentals, but it's allowed me to continue to grow the portfolio and shift it through 1031 exchanges, create a legacy for my kids. And also now I'm actually in the process of liquidating a few of them. A couple of them have doubled and tripled in value, and liquidate a few of them and actually shift out of that without having to pay the capital gain. So there are ways to mitigate the taxes in all areas. So I'm going to open it up for questions, but before I do, I want to actually share one thing more with you. I'm going to just do a little bit of math. And this is, as I talk to agents and we talk about opportunity, since you guys are in EXP, I want you to really have a good appreciation of the opportunity that you have inside EXP. So let me just make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so in the financial services area, I work with people that have invested heavily in stock market assets. I work with realtors that have invested heavily in real estate. And then I kind of look at the big picture on it. And let's just say that, when I work with doctors that have been in the VA system for years and they've, 35 years, they've been making 300,000, they're going to retire with a pension that's about 3,500 a month. And when I look at the opportunity we have, and let's just say if we're trying to create a passive income of let's call it 5,000 a month. 5,000 a month, according to, if you wanted 5,000 a month, times 12 months, that would be 60,000 a year. Okay. To get 60,000 a year, according to Morningstar, if you were saving this up and you were going to make stock investments and create a portfolio, of stocks, you would only want to spend about 4% of that, investable asset. So at 60,000 divided by 0.04, whoops, let me do it the other way. You'd need to have saved about $1.5 million. Yeah, so with a $1.5 million stock portfolio or portfolio of any kind, and you're going to take 4% of it, then you can average your 5,000 a month and probably not run out of money. Okay. And so, usually as I talk to people, I don't run across, frankly, too many that have $1.5 million saved up, or that they're in a position that even over the next 10, 15 years, they'll be able to save up that much. And so then we look at real estate investing, and I've been investing for a lot of years, and I can typically buy a house for about 300,000 each. Okay. And the houses that I'm buying, they're not in Colorado because I can't get them for 300,000 that are going to cash flow for me. So I'm typically buying right now in Oklahoma or Indiana or Memphis or Orlando area. But 300,000 each will typically get me, if I pay cash for it, it's going to get me about 2,000 per month. Okay. And 2,000 a month, but by the time I pay the property manager, there's going to be some maintenance and vacancy that we've got to account for. There's usually an HOA, there's taxes, there's insurance. By the time you take out the overhead on owning real estate, you're typically netting about half that. And some people are doing better, but especially if you manage it yourself, but just assume you're netting about half that. So you're going to need 5 homes to hit that 5,000. And if the homes are 300,000 each, you're still going to need about 1.5 million to invest. Okay. So that's still a pretty penny, and it takes a little while. And then you get to manage it at the same time. Now, if you look at the opportunity, that it's a very unique opportunity we have in EXP. We could go out on our own. We could be a broker owner. We could, create that revenue stream. But in EXP, we can basically act like a broker owner, but we can have all the services that EXP provides. And so what I'm talking about is agent attraction or revenue share. And this is why I make this a big part of what I do at EXP and why I've grown to that 150 agents, because it's totally a game changer. So within under 5 years, since I've really been doing the rev share, I've created more than that 5,000 a month off my 150 agents. And there's no way I would have been able to accumulate about 1.5 million to create an investment that could give me that. Now at EXP, we typically say every agent you can expect to get about 500 per year per agent. Now, why is that? We know that off that first agent we can get $4,000 if they cap. And we know that in the next year we can get, what is the number? 16, now 1,400 a year from them. So we know that the numbers are a little bit bigger, but now go back to the NAR stats. The 70% of our agents didn't close a single transaction last year. And so, we don't have all cappers. And so if you just take 500 per agent, if you want to get up to that 60,000 a year, you're going to need about 120 agents. Now, I for those of you, I see some faces here that come to the Mondays and the Thursdays on agent attraction and really lean into that. Tell me, 120 agents, not that all you brought in. Let's say you bring in 30 of them, 20 of them, and you help other people bring in the friends they have. Which is easier, that 1.5 million, investing in real estate, or bringing in 120 agents? For me, it's when I look at the math on it, and I've been in the financial services industry for quite a while, I have never seen anything that gives us this kind of power. Even people that are sitting in jobs that have pensions, which we, of course, in real estate do not. So it's a powerful structure.
And when you're talking about your IULs, is there a timeline when you have to keep them funded before you can start taking any money out of that before you can invest?
You can set it up that way, or you can put on a rider so that you can have access to the money immediately, which is what I did, because I had enough money to buy a house, so I wanted to take it out now and buy the house. So there are ways to set it up either way. It can be one of two strategies. One strategy is a left pocket to right pocket. I want to relocate my money that I have and fund IUL, and we're going to fund it over 3 to 5 years. That's one strategy. The other is a cash flow strategy. I'm doing well. I'm making good money. I want to be able to put aside, 20,000 a year into something. And then we take a cash flow strategy and we invest. So it's dependent on a design around what serves you and what your long-term goals are. Yeah, you've got to be a real estate professional, which as a realtor we are. So that puts us into the category that bonus depreciation becomes a tax strategy that we can take advantage of. And so then it's a matter of going to your tax accountant and having them look at your more recent real estate purchases to see if any of them qualify for bonus depreciation and where that it would provide advantage to you. It's a flexible premium policy, whereas term and whole life carry a monthly premium. IUL is flexible, so basically I accumulate the amount that I'm going to put in for the year, and I usually do one premium a year instead. So, and if you have a bad year and you can't do a premium, you can space it out. And the bottom line, there's a cost of insurance, and then there's a cost of loan that you get to cover. But outside of that, the premium can be flexible. So it's a nice tool.